Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth. So I haven't done a video in a while, but I just thought I'd share some thoughts on how everything is a mess today. And I know spiritual people and your logical, rational people, the atheists, we're in a perception war here that definitely is a spiritual thing. But it seems like everything is a mess today, and I personally don't really know where it's headed. There are some people who claim that we are headed in a right direction. Obviously, you have to dismantle certain things in order for new things to grow. But in what direction is that going? In a positive or a negative way? I haven't done a video in a while because I finally got to go back to see my family. And I noticed while in Ohio, I've come to realize how much of a rat cage we've lived in the West Coast. Things have kind of slowly crept up a little bit more business-wise, but it's like this constant gaslighting between going from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 1 and all of this stuff. It just seems like everything is an absolute mess. And what is the most shocking part about all this is I never expected many moons ago for any form of the kind of compassionate liberal culture to go in the direction of what I'm seeing in Seattle. Companies that I work for are only putting trainers back to teach live classes only if they've had their shots. Now, the problem with this is like people who work from home, if some companies are like, hey, you can't come back to the office, they at least have a job. Trainers who've been doing this online, the online isn't staying around, it's leaving. It's like the great replacement is happening. So the online replaced the live stuff is coming back. Now we're just losing work. So what the hell does that mean? Should the government pay us for lost wages because of some form of discrimination where some properties and companies are choosing to choose to hire their preferred people who have the vaccination? It's getting a mess. I'm arguing with friends. Even I come from Ohio. I know people who voted progressive and people who voted conservative, and even some people that I know that voted for Trump and who are like full-blown almost conservatives now. They were like former or reformed liberals, I should say, are still in promotion of a vaccine passport, and they believe that everybody should get the shot regardless of what the VAERS and the CDC is saying, where the current update that I've recently heard within the last week is that there's about 190,000 Americans who've had a side effect, in addition to over 4,000 people who have died from the shot. And this is insanity, especially if you look at the history of this stuff, where back in the 60s and 70s, vaccines were halted, even if there was as much as like 25 deaths. Any form of emergency use was put to a halt. The scientists had to restudy and reanalyze. And so what I don't think, personally, I don't want to live in a world where I have to fight all the time. It's almost like biblical prophecy is really coming to fruition, and it's kind of scary. And it just seems like the more divided we are, we're just about to eat ourselves up. And in reality, China and India and all these places are going to lead and take the power, where some people are like, well, that's fine, let them take the power. But you don't really understand what you've had until you lose it. And do we really want a country like China to be the leaders of the world? I don't think so. I just don't think people really value or understand their freedom because they're ignorant. I used to think, and I still do think, that billionaires are ruling but ruining the world. Now I'm starting to think that it's just the ignorant masses that are starting to ruin the world. My family survived World War II. I am not Jewish. I do work for a Jewish company, and they are, for the most part, very accepting of everybody. Especially with, they promoted, like, really highly recommend the shot, but if you do have a religious exemption or a medical exemption, they're very accepting about that, and they haven't made you feel uncomfortable about it, which I think is great. But what is just crazy to me is seeing like businesses in yoga studios in Seattle that are going back to live classes are requiring you to show your shot passport or whatever you want to call it in order to wear a mask or not. And I understand that's the one way to control the CDC's things, but I just think at some point this is the start to a very bleak future where it's like, should we just start wearing the Star of David on our sleeve again? I don't know. Everything is a mess, and I hope that the future has positive results and it's going to get messy in order for it to change. But I don't know if we have, like, do we have to have it get messy? As somebody who's lived abroad 4 times, I lived in Australia twice, India for a summer, and I lived in Germany for about a year and a half. And every time I've gone abroad, there's other countries and cultures that have been so insanely jealous of the United States because of everything that we've had and our advancements in not only in human rights, but say with like technology. Why do we have to completely destruct ourselves? I just think there's so much inversion. There's so much inversion of logic, but just everything is getting flipped upside down to where it's just a scary, scary future to think about, especially because I think I'm a millennial on paper. I'm 36. That when we're senior citizens, I really think this younger generation is going to ruin it all. And then, I don't know, it's just going to be bad. I think, man, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of inspiration. That's why part of the reason why I haven't really done these videos, because I just don't want to talk about this stuff. But I also believe that you have to talk about it. You have to get uncomfortable in conversation in order for growth in order to grow and in order to understand perspectives and for things to change. I'm just going to find it very interesting if people are not getting selected for jobs, or if they're not going to be able to get certain jobs back just because of this. Like, at what point does this collapse an economy? But it's also like, well, how is that person going to survive? I mean, yeah, they could go and find another job. Sure, that sounds like the easy thing. But, you know, you're telling somebody with a master's degree and 15 years of experience in the same field to just go and become a cashier at a grocery